Good morning, everybody. Republican candidate for Wisconsin Attorney General Adam Jarchow is my very special guest today, Thursday, June 16th, 2022. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching DrydenWire Live. Special thank you to some of our recent guests, including Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald, Washburn County AODA Prevention Specialist Julie Beaver, Congressman Tom Tiffany, Sawyer County Judge John Jarchow, 68th Assembly District Representative and candidate for Wisconsin's 23rd Senate District, Jesse James, and Washburn County Clerk of Court Shannon Anderson, just to name a few. You can watch a recording of those and all of our previous shows on our website at DrydenWire.com, right here on our Facebook page under the Videos tab, or just go to YouTube to find most of our recorded videos, just at youtube.com/DrydenWire. But today we welcome back friend of the show, Republican candidate for Wisconsin Attorney General Adam Jarchow. Adam, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Ben. How are we?
Pretty good. Not too bad. Nice having you back on again. I was looking yesterday when I was putting up the announcement that you were going to be on. The last time you were on just for a show, just you and I think it was back in December. But you also joined Fitzy and I in our Positive Tuesday shows a couple of months ago, I think. So this is the first time you and I have had a chance to chat in like 7 months. So I'm excited to find out how everything is going. So on that note, hey, how's everything going?
Everything is going good. You know, the most important thing in my life is being a dad. The kids are good. They're off of school, so they finished third grade. They're getting huge. It's amazing how fast it goes being a dad. And they're doing baseball. The boy is doing baseball. The girl's doing softball. Business is good. The law practice is good. Busy running around the state with the campaign. That's going great. So, yeah, life's good. No complaints. And it's summer. It's warm out. Finally, it's finally warm out.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately. Yeah, so speaking of that, so my daughter, Riley, we have 5 kids, but 2 of them are still here at home. The other 3 are all grown-ups now. And Riley had an 8th grade graduation. Did you have one of those? Because I don't remember having a graduation. 8th grade, it was just, all right, 8th grade's finished, you go. Did you have one of those?
Yeah, I'm old. I don't know. I don't remember. That's a long time ago, man. I don't think so, but I don't remember doing anything like that.
Yeah, I don't either. So, I'm sorry. All my lighting is all of a sudden screwing up. So let's talk about something I just put up this morning. Just had it sent to us at 8 o'clock. So I was like panicking and trying to get this all ready. So I put up the post and I pulled out the video so I can show that here in a minute. But you just had what I would think would be kind of a cool and pretty awesome endorsement. I've been asked, like, who is my favorite guest I've ever had on? Obviously, you'd be on there, but you're a recurring guest. Tom's on quite a bit. Fitzy, of course. John Jarchow's great. But in terms of, like, one-time guests, only once, this was the person that I said was my favorite one-time guest I've ever had. What do you want to say about it before we play this video?
So I grew up in Polk County, first in my family to graduate from college. So kind of a normal run-of-the-mill country boy, and have had an absolutely blessed life. So I'm still kind of that guy that's a little bit starstruck. So what you're about to show is that our campaign has been endorsed by Ted Nugent. And Ted is an American rock legend. He's a huge supporter of sportsmen and the Second Amendment. So having his endorsement for a small town guy from Polk County is pretty awesome. And I'm pretty excited about it. And I'm humbled. And it's just, when I saw that video, I actually had chills. And I showed a couple people at one of the businesses that we own, some of the folks that I work with. And they're like, holy cow, how did you get that?
Yeah, and I want to ask you, how did this come? And I think I did this right. It's the first time I've ever played a video or tried to during a live show. I think I'm doing this right, so here we go.
Hey, I'm Ted Nugent, and I support Adam Jarchow for Attorney General in Wisconsin. I know real Wisconsin, the families with heart and soul that want someone representing them for God, family, country, Constitution, Bill of Rights, 10 Commandments, Golden Rule, law and order. Adam Jarchow, representing the U.S. Constitution and real law enforcement and law and order. Adam Jarchow for Attorney General of the great state of Wisconsin.
That's pretty awesome.
Come on,
Right?
man.
I mean, come on.
Seriously, how cool is that?
Yeah,
It's
that's
like,
it.
it's one of the coolest things that I've gotten to see during this campaign, and we've gotten to do some really cool things. We've gotten some great endorsements and had some great opportunities. But Ted Nugent is,
That's just
one
awesome.
of those guys, and for him to say, "I endorse Adam Jarchow for Attorney General," that's
Yeah.
spectacular.
So how did that come to be? How does that work?
Well, so Hunter Nation is a pro sportsman group here in Wisconsin.
Mhm.
It's run by a gentleman named Luke Hilgeman, who has been a freedom fighter for a long time in Wisconsin. And Ted Nugent is the spokesperson for Hunter Nation. So I know Luke, and Luke knows me and knows my record. When I was in the legislature, there was probably nobody that was more pro sportsman, more pro Second Amendment than I was. I have a 100% A+ NRA rating. I was the author of the Right to Hunt Act, the constitutional carry bill. And so I think, Luke is very comfortable talking to somebody like Ted Nugent about me and my campaign and how I would fight for sportsmen and the Second Amendment. So he talked to Ted, apparently, I don't know, I wasn't there. And Nugent said, I'm in. I know all I need to know about the guy. He's a lifelong hunter, and just like you, Ben, right? A lifelong hunter. And he's my guy. And so he filmed the video and sent it. And I was just absolutely shell-shocked. I was rocked. It was awesome.
That is awesome.
I played Cat Scratch Fever, the video, for my 9-year-old son the other night after he watched the video endorsement, because of course he's only seen the current Ted Nugent, not the long-haired rock star Ted Nugent.
It's funny you said that, because that's exactly what I did with my kids. When I found out that he was going to be on for a show, and my wife came home and the kids were home, I'm like, hey, Ted Nugent's going to be on the show tomorrow. Or it was a couple days or something from that. The kids are like, who? Like, Ted, here. So I literally played that song, that exact same song. I'm like, yeah.
That's
and I
great.
think I probably listened to it like 5 times that night.
Right.
And I'm thinking, like, that's so bizarre that he's going to be on the show. So good for you. Congratulations on that. When you get an endorsement like that, I mean, like, you've had sheriffs endorse you. That's very important. I've personally, support and endorse you because you're my friend, so duh. But that doesn't mean anything. Like, nobody's going to vote for you. In fact, probably less people vote for you because I said, I like Adam. But when that happens, does that move the needle for people? Or is it just, that's awesome?
Yeah, I think what people want to know about, who they're voting for is what kind of person they actually are. Because you can't ever know every single issue that's likely to arise. But if you get to know somebody's heart and what they've done in the past and their background and people who they generally align with, if they support them, then they begin to develop a rapport and a comfort level. So I think having somebody like Ted Nugent, who has an absolutely 100% grade A record with sportsmen and gun owners, supporting me sends a signal to people like, hey, this guy is one of us. He will be there. He will fight for us. He will fight for the things that we care about. And people don't think about the AG, the Attorney General, as somebody that really can impact the Second Amendment or hunting rights or sportsmen. But that's absolutely not true. It is a huge, important agency for protecting people's Second Amendment rights and protecting sportsmen and promoting those issues. So I tell people, and some of my friends that are running for governor kind of don't agree with me, but I tell them I think for sportsmen and the Second Amendment, the Attorney General's office is equally as important as the governor's office. It can really do some great things to protect sportsmen.
Okay, I want to circle back to that in just a minute. But there was another thing that I found, because anyone that watches any of the shows that I do, I never really look up anything about my guest that is going to come on. Now, you've been on a few times before, but at 7:30, right? So I send the link at 8:15. Make sure we have 15 minutes of an audio, video check thing. But it's from 7:30 to 8 is when I just Google my guest name and just start looking at anything with news or anything that's in it. I found another thing, and it was AFP has endorsed you. AFP, I believe, is American... No, what is it? Americans for Prosperity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know much about them. So they endorsed you. It seemed like a big deal. Is it?
It is. It's a huge deal. AFP has one of the biggest grassroots armies in the entire state. So the way the campaign finance laws work is, once I have their endorsement and they're going to go spend money supporting me, we can't communicate, we can't coordinate. So I don't really know exactly what they're going to do. But typically in a race like this, they're going to engage their grassroots activists who will knock on hundreds of thousands of doors on behalf of our campaign. They may run some digital ads or some other things like that. So it is an absolutely huge deal. And the reason that I have that endorsement, again, it kind of goes back to my record as a legislator, and even after I was out of the legislature and still continued to fight for people's freedom, during the COVID shutdowns and all of that, is I've been a freedom fighter for a long time, and I'm an unwavering freedom fighter. And that's what AFP really cares about. They know that this office, the Attorney General's office, can have a massive impact on people's personal liberty, pushing back on overreach from Washington, D.C., our own bureaucracy. And so they got involved last week. We had a debate last week with the AG candidates, which, I feel like we clearly won and showed the depth and breadth of my experience and, how I would be able to step in day one and begin running that agency in an effective, efficient way like business people run things. And so we've had a great 2 weeks in this campaign, and I'm feeling really good about, as we come up to the August primary.
But you're not a prosecutor.
That's true. I'm not a prosecutor.
That's the only thing that I ever see is like, but he's not a prosecutor. What do you say when people bring that up?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that we ought to talk about related to what DOJ does. So it has 750 or so employees. The breadth of what DOJ covers, if you just look at our statutes, there are dozens and dozens of areas. We haven't had an attorney general in our state prosecute a case for nearly 20 years. This job is about managing an agency, setting the course of a policy direction, being a fighter for the things that we care about and our conservative values. And so the idea that you'd have to have that narrow experience as opposed to the deep and broad legal experience that I've had as a lawyer for 20 years, a small business owner, a dad, a husband, a volunteer firefighter, a sportsman, a former legislator. Those are experiences that will immediately allow me to step into this job on day one and start fighting for our law enforcement to make sure they're fully funded, pushing back on the violent crime epidemic, fighting for our individual freedoms, fighting back against Washington, D.C. overreach. Those are the things that I think people are most interested in. And, my experience is the only one in this race that can actually step in day one and do the job.
So the 5 state races, not including Senate stuff, but I mean the big ones, right? Governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, state treasurer, and secretary of state. Just in terms of public interest, I bet if I asked 100 people right now, they wouldn't, less than 10 would be able to say who the state treasurer is or the secretary of state. Actually, I would say that's true. But obviously, governor's number one. Especially when it comes to ballot time, voting time, that brings out people to vote. There's a reason it's the top of the ticket. And you would think lieutenant governor would be the second, but in terms of, I think, just public interest, and I think attorney general is the second, not in terms of importance. They're all very important jobs. But I think just in public interest, attorney general is second on that list. Would you agree that it would be in that top 2 or 3?
Yeah, I would. And I think, I joke with my friends that are running for lieutenant governor. There's a whole bunch of them. I think there's 8 left. And those guys, I kind of say, well, the AG candidate should get to speak first because we have actual responsibilities in our job.
Nice.
And it's tongue in cheek. A good lieutenant governor can do enormous things to sell the agenda of the governor and to be on task force and, get the message out. It's a very important job, but I actually do think the AG is a more important job as far as the actual duties that go into it. We're in a rising crime epidemic. We have a drug epidemic with the fentanyl coming in from the southern border. We have massive incursions into our civil liberties by the federal government and by our own bureaucracy. We have a lot of work to do. Jarchow has, the current attorney general, has really decimated the Department of Justice. I mean, he is easily the worst attorney general that we have ever had. And it's why, sheriffs and law enforcement across the state, Republican and Democrats, are disappointed with Jarchow and the way that he's run the agency. So we have big issues to solve, big issues to fix at DOJ. And having somebody like me with private sector experience that's actually signed the front of a paycheck, not just the back of a paycheck, that's managed people, managed the budget, worked in the legislature, worked in the budget process in the legislature, can step in and immediately begin fixing these issues that we have. And it it's really important because we have a terrible recruitment and retention crisis in law enforcement right now. And we have to, start paying serious attention to that to get the rising crime epidemic under control.
Last week, and I brought this up when I had Congressman Tom Tiffany on last Friday. He comes on for a monthly show, and I put up a graph of statistics. I should have had that ready for this show. And it was a poll from 538.com, and it was showing like where everyone's interest is right now in terms of voting. Like, what is the most important issues to you? Some things surprised me, like abortion was like 14th or 15th down there, which, I mean, everything going on, national media, et cetera, and what's happening in the Supreme Court, I assumed that was going to be higher. But the number one and number two was inflation first, and then crime and gun violence. They were put in the same one. Gun control. Crime and gun control was two, inflation number one. As an attorney general, start with the inflation part. Because like my wife, she doesn't really care that much about politics. She doesn't follow it that much. But now all of a sudden it's $150 normally to go for a week to get some groceries. Now it's like $230.
Right.
And the gas and et cetera. So now it's like, okay, who do we blame? How do we fix it? Like, you're getting her to actually start caring about this stuff because it's impacting, her budget too. I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, right.
Well,
so inflation. Is there anything that an attorney general in Wisconsin, if you were the attorney general right now, is there anything that you could do, or that's, no, not really?
Yeah, and particularly in specific areas. So if you think about energy security, so we have gas prices that are through the roof. We have, I live in the country, so we heat our house with propane through the roof, natural gas through the roof. A number of the products that your wife is seeing and my family is seeing in the grocery store rising in price come from farms right here in Wisconsin. Having a stable, pro-business regulatory environment for farms, for our energy producers, for pipelines, for pro-America energy production, those things can have an enormous impact on price. Now, can they outstrip the spending by the federal government like they're drunken sailors? No. But can they have a serious impact on the price that we pay at the pump and the price that we pay for a gallon of milk? You bet you. And as Attorney General, I would focus like a laser on those kitchen table issues. And the other thing that you rightly talked about was crime, and specifically gun crime. And what do we do about that? If inflation's number one, crime is number two. Of course, the Department of Justice and the Attorney General play a huge role in that. And that's why, maybe even 3 months ago, we rolled out my campaign's Make Wisconsin Safe Again plan. And we specifically targeted two things that have been in the news: gun crime by felons and school safety. So when I was in the legislature, we voted to create the Office of School Safety within the Department of Justice. Jarchow has screwed it up. We have now proposed making it a standalone division. Every single parent, including me, that sends 2 9-year-old kids to school every day deserves to know that when their kids go to school, that they are safe. We should take whatever steps are necessary to make sure that our kids are safe in school. And the other thing that we keep seeing is a push by the other side of new laws, many of which infringe on people's Second Amendment rights. But if you look at the people that are using guns in crimes, more times than not, they are convicted felons who are not allowed to possess guns. So we had proposed that DOJ really take an active role in cracking down on gun crime by career felons in our largest cities. If we would do just those two things, it would have an enormous impact on protecting public safety. Again, we have an attorney general right now who would rather play politics with these things and throw out trite talking points and propose things that he knows will never pass, instead of actually working with the legislature to get things done that are doable, that don't infringe on our Second Amendment rights, that protect kids and protect our communities. These are all common sense things that we can do if we would have an attorney general that wasn't just a partisan hack. What we need is an attorney general with some common sense, who's committed to protecting our civil liberties, but also protecting our communities and protecting our kids.
So first, we should probably clarify, not all sailors are drunken. Because sometimes, we say things on the show. Like, I don't understand, like, if I wasn't doing this, or here's a good business idea for someone, start another business and just have someone just listen to every show. And then if you take it out of context and, just look for headlines, every show I do, like 15, I don't know how, whatever. I mean, just find one, who are the people that report things at news outlets starts with a J. What are they called?
They used to be called journalists. Are they still called
I was
that?
thinking jerks. But, okay, the same thing. See,
Oh,
there's
that's
another
not
great
right.
example right there. DrydenWire
Wow.
founder calls all journalists jerks.
Wow.
Well, I didn't, but kind of. Anyway, also, top 2 things there. So you're talking about guns and inflation. Going back to, again, using the analogy of my wife, where this is same thing with us. So it's not just the impact. And thankfully, God has blessed us, and we've put money away so we're fine. We can pay a little bit extra for our food and for gas, etc. But also, as you had mentioned, you have kids, crime. That's a big deal. I mean, kids going there, we want them to be safe, and school safety, like those 2 things. So it doesn't surprise me that when you looked at this list of where everyone, or the issues that people had, that those 2 were by far at the top. But what I find most is then all these other topics that are underneath there are the ones that I see in the news. So they're the ones talking about it, but it's actually, nobody really, they do care. But man, inflation and our crime. Speaking of felons and guns, I ran a story this morning. Actually, it was in your area from Polk County. I don't have I should have printed that out too. See, I'm never prepared for these things. And this was a 7th offense OWI, alleged, on a motorcycle. He got pulled over at a traffic stop. Convicted felon, had a gun, loaded. Gets $750 cash bond for a 7th offense OWI, convicted felon with a gun and the drug paraphernalia. All right. I wasn't in the room. I don't know, but man, I don't like seeing that. And again, I don't know what the situation was in detail. I don't know that. But that's not good optics. I don't like seeing $750 bond.
Right. So, I think that one of the reasons that I've spent so much time talking about the crime issue and what the Attorney General can do on this is because we're not just seeing this rising crime in Milwaukee like we hear so much about. Certainly it's a major problem in Milwaukee. We're going to set another murder record there. You may have seen the Kia Boys kind of YouTube video. We had 10,000 carjackings in Milwaukee last year, more than Chicago. But we have these kind of things happening all across Wisconsin like you're talking about here today. And one of the biggest problems that we have is that we have prosecutors and some judges, not all prosecutors and not all judges. We have some really good ones, but we have a lot of them that simply have a different worldview. And I call it a cancer in our criminal justice system. When people break the law, particularly repeatedly or in a violent way, society rightly expects that we put them in prison. And for some reason, we have a lot of prosecutors that seem to think that they need to sort of be like a criminal defense attorney. We have criminal defense attorneys. They can do that part of the deal. We have those. Yeah. Right. The prosecutor is supposed to be there representing me and you and our communities to keep us safe and enforcing the law. And this is, again, one of the reasons why I think having somebody from outside of that prosecutor club as Attorney General right now is so very important. Historically, we've kind of gravitated towards electing prosecutors in Wisconsin, but nationwide, we're seeing a move away from that. And I think one of the reasons is we see too many prosecutors who are kind of soft on crime. They're this low bail, soft on crime plea deals. So having an AG who will bring transparency and accountability to prosecutors and judges all across the state is really, really important right now. And you're simply not going to have that happen if you hire somebody that's in that club. You need to have an outsider who, has an interest in protecting public safety, not protecting people in the club. So
how does that work then? Is it, let's say, well, we won't use this specific one, but a scenario where there is a $750 cash bond, but it was the 7th offense OWI, convicted felon, had a gun, which is not supposed to, etc. And you're the Attorney General and you kind of get wind of this, or somehow, I don't know, you see this stuff. Do you email them? Do you call them? Or is it, no, that's like if they get that call, whether it's the DA or whomever that it is that you would contact, is it, hey man, stay in your lane, don't tell me what to do, or is that what an Attorney General should do? How does that work, you think?
There's a couple specific things that I've talked about needing to do. So first of all, we have to have bail reform in Wisconsin. So when I was in the legislature, I voted for the constitutional amendment that would have allowed for consideration of additional circumstances when setting bail. We have a quirky constitutional provision now that's somewhat constraining, and the way that it's been interpreted by the courts is overly constraining. So we voted for that. It didn't pass at the time. It's going to pass now. And then the legislature will, I think, change those rules so that courts are explicitly allowed to consider other circumstances other than just returning to court.
Sure.
The problem that we have, though, is even if they're allowed to consider that, if you have prosecutors and judges who won't do it, what good does it do? So I think we have to have mandatory minimums on bail for certain crimes, particularly repeat violent offenders. A guy like that you're talking about that had a felon with a gun and a 7th OWI. I mean, he's a danger to the community, if you ask me.
Kind of.
So why don't we have a minimum bail set for him to make sure that he is not a danger to the community while he's awaiting his trial? We also have to consider mandatory minimums because we're having these soft on crime plea deals, and we're having judges set sentencing that is, I think a lot of us look at and say, holy cow, they did that and they got nearly nothing, a slap on the wrist. People are sick and tired of that, and it is, I think, contributing to the recruitment and retention crisis we have in law enforcement. Just think, if you go out there and you do that dangerous job,
sure,
you arrest the same people over and over again, and then they're put back out onto the street. It's a real problem. And so, I was talking to Sheriff Morotek up in Sawyer County not too long ago, and he was kind enough to give me a tour of their jail. And we're talking about, all of the inmates that they had in their jail, and, how they have a jail that's typically got a lot of inmates in it. And I said, well, why do you think that is? And he said, well, we have a really good judge that actually puts people in jail in Sawyer County, Judge Jarchow.
Yeah.
And so it makes a big difference when you have a judge that will do that. But we have too many judges that, simply have a different philosophy. And I think that's the time where the legislature has to step in. Having an attorney general who will fight for that is really important. And then finally, when I talk about accountability and transparency, why don't we have a website that DOJ runs that sets out every bail recommendation and every plea deal, and lists the judges and lists the prosecutors, so the people in your community, in Spooner, can know exactly what's going on in your county. People in Polk County can know what's going on in their county, and Waukesha County can know what's going on in their county, because then they, as citizens and voters, can hold their prosecutors and judges accountable at the ballot box.
I love that idea. Do you think they'll appreciate it?
I think that there will be some resistance by some, but ultimately, if you're doing that job, if you've run for that job, if you're in the business of prosecuting people, that is your job. That is our expectation. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars on our criminal justice system, and we expect that people that are career violent criminals are behind bars. And that's a pretty reasonable expectation for society to have. And for whatever reason, that expectation is being thwarted now. And it is time that we get to the business of actually putting these criminals behind bars.
We have a question here. Renee, so what power do you have to change this? Is it true the judge can only do so much? I know you were kind of touching on those things, but is there a response to that for Renee?
Yeah. So, we talked about most of it, but I think the legislature, mandatory minimums on bail, on some, crime, on punishment on some crime, accountability and transparency from DOJ to make sure that voters understand exactly what's going on. If we would do those things, just those things, I think it would have a significant impact on people feeling like the criminal justice system is once again working for them. You might have missed it on the news last week. The very liberal George Soros funded district attorney in San Francisco.
I know. I did see that.
Was recalled. You know that there's a serious problem when San Francisco liberals say enough is enough with crime. And I hear it every single day, not only from citizens, but law enforcement. They are sick and tired of what's going on. And it is time that we have an attorney general who will fight for them and fight for our communities and the safety of our communities.
So fast forward a year from now, you win the primary, you win the general, you're in office in January, so it'd be 6 months in right now, a year from now. Mm-hmm. We'll have you back on the show 1 year from now. Well, probably before that, but what does Wisconsin Attorney General Adam Jarchow administration look like? If we can call it administration or your term, like what does that look like juxtaposed to what are we seeing now? I know we've talked about a lot of things that I want to get done, but in a year from now, what does that look like to the average citizen?
This is a great question because about 1 year from right now, which would be 6 months after I take office, we will be signing the next state budget. It is so important that the next Attorney General can hit the ground running on that state budget because we have to fully fund our law enforcement. So I fully expect 1 year from today, when I'm back on your show, we will be just signing or just about to sign a state budget that will fully fund law enforcement, that will help resolve the recruitment and retention crisis, that will give cops a raise, that will make sure that they're the best trained and best equipped in the entire Midwest, that this state, that Wisconsin, is the very best place in the entire Midwest for law enforcement to work. So we begin getting our arms around this recruitment and retention crisis, and we are going to be celebrating with law enforcement across the state a renewed commitment to supporting their very important mission. We will also have already fixed the lack of DCI agents that Jarchow has allowed to go vacant at the Department of Justice. Loosely equate our criminal investigators at the Department of Justice with the FBI. Jarchow has allowed dozens of those positions to go unfilled, and it's having a massive impact across our state on local law enforcement because they support local law enforcement, particularly in rural communities. We'll have also go ahead.
On that, so DCI, I mean, obviously, on DrydenWire, kind of our bread and butter has always been crime in court 1, then politics and government 2, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. But those are just kind of what we do. So we do a lot of stories, original articles, crime stories, etc. And when I'm reading these criminal complaints, I see DCI all the time in these things. Even just like an undercover online sting thing, from a dude is trying to hook up with like a 15-year-old girl or something. DCI is involved. DCI is involved in this murder because we only have so many resources, obviously, in our area, like you had mentioned, rural communities. But you said that our current Attorney General isn't filling those positions. I guess I was unaware of that. Was there a reason for it, or we're trying to, but nobody wants the job?
I suspect it's because Josh Call's an abysmal failure in all respects, including as a manager. So what Call says is, I don't have the funding from the legislature. It's complete nonsense. We have a legislature right now that would fully fund law enforcement, would provide whatever funding was necessary if that was the issue. It is not the issue. The issue is that Josh Call has prioritized turning the Department of Justice into his old kind of liberal law firm, Perkins Coie, and using it as kind of a liberal mouthpiece on liberal issues and harassing our businesses and, bringing those kind of actions as opposed to supporting law enforcement. So we can fill the DCI agent positions, and that will be a priority for me. We will get it done. The one thing that you have to know about business people and in our business and every other business is results matter. If I don't wake up in the morning and get a positive result every single day, we go out of business. And that's the kind of attitude that I will bring to government is we will get results. We won't just talk about these things. By this time in June, we will have made significant progress in filling those DCI positions. Same thing on the prosecutor positions that he's cut. And by the way, we're behind the 8 ball now, so we probably have to actually add DCI agents to where they were when we had Attorney General Schimmel. We probably have to add prosecutors from when we had Attorney General Schimmel. The last thing, and this is a perennial issue at the Department of Justice that we constantly hear about, is the backlog at the crime lab. It is shocking to me that, every single time there's an election for an attorney general, the candidates go out there and talk about, I'm going to fix the crime lab issues. And then for whatever reason, they're not fixed. Again, results matter. We will get results. We will turn around evidence to local law enforcement and local prosecutors quickly and efficiently so they can prosecute these cases and put criminals behind bars. So that in that, June of next year, after I've been on the job for 6 months, that is going to be significant progress in supporting law enforcement and fixing these issues. And by the way, we're going to have sued Joe Biden dozens of times by then probably over all of these things that he continues to do that are illegal overreaches that violate our constitutional rights, separation of powers, principles of federalism, violate our state sovereignty. There are all kinds of lawsuits going on around the country that other Republican attorneys general have brought. And I will join those suits, and we will look for other suits where the Biden administration has overreached and our own bureaucracy has overreached, and we'll hold them accountable. This is going to be a sprint to fix the issues at DOJ.
How does that work? So I've seen that before where there's multiple attorneys general will, or like maybe ours or others, they kind of join together, and one of like 22 attorneys general who have filed a lawsuit against the governor. Does that ever go anywhere? Or is that pretty much just a waste? Because I never really hear the follow-up on those that, yep, okay, since we got sued, now we're going to do something different here. Like, I'm the president, and now, because they all filed a lawsuit, now everything changes. I never hear that. I just hear that we're all suing them, but I never hear the outcomes.
No, there are big wins that have happened with Republican attorneys general over the last couple of years, particularly over the overreach on the COVID mandate. So the ones that brought the COVID cases against the vaccine mandates that Joe Biden was trying to impose, Republican attorneys general. You see this time and time again. You saw it a lot during when Schimmel was our AG, talking about like the waters of the U.S., which sounds great, right? We all want to protect water, but when they want to protect every single puddle and assert federal jurisdiction and have the massive impact that has on agriculture and our ag economy and on the farmers in Wisconsin, Brad Schimmel was right to take on that fight. Joe Biden will continue to push these things, and we will continue to win. And right now, we have a U.S. Supreme Court that has, at times, at least a 6-3 conservative majority that is interested in protecting, principles of state sovereignty and separation of powers, and ensuring that we have the various layers of government involved in their role and being in their box. We shouldn't have a president that is judge, jury, and executioner, right? We should have a president that executes the laws that the legislature, the Congress, has passed. Instead, he governs by illegal rule, illegal regulation, illegal executive order. And I firmly believe he's going to lose the Congress in November. And when he loses the Congress, it's going to get even worse. So we need to have an attorney general who will push back forcefully on federal overreach.
By the way, side note, I miss Brad Schimmel. So we still will talk every once in a while. I like that guy. So when I first started DrydenWire, he was the attorney general. So I got to know him that way. And now that he isn't, we still chat every once in a while. And I've never talked to Jarchow. I think we've asked, if he wanted to come on or something, but we haven't got a response back. I love that dude. There's a question here. Does the attorney general have the power to remove a DA / prosecutor for egregious malfeasance of their office?
The governor does. So when we saw the Waukesha massacre at that Christmas parade, and we all learned that it was due, in part at least, to John Chisholm's negligence, the Milwaukee County prosecutor, right, who allowed Darrell Brooks, the perpetrator in that case, out on low bail. I was actually the first person in the state to deliver a written demand to Tony Evers that he remove John Chisholm from his position as district attorney. Now, under the law, you actually have to have a citizen or a taxpayer of the county where that prosecutor is. So a group of Milwaukee County residents followed up and also asked for their removal. Of course, Evers did nothing about it because that's what Evers does, so we still have Chisholm there. Every gubernatorial candidate out there has said that they will remove, every Republican gubernatorial candidate has said that they will remove John Chisholm. Now, Chisholm obviously will fight that, and as AG, I would be, supporting the removal of John Chisholm and other DAs that refuse to do their job and allow criminals back out on the streets in a systematic way who harm our communities. We can't have DAs like John Chisholm who continue to fail and refuse to do their job. We have to have people in those important positions who will actually prosecute the criminals. So it's not the AG that does the removing under our laws, it's the governor. But I'd certainly be supportive and helping along the way. And if there are lawsuits and opportunities for DOJ to support the governor for removing those kind of DAs, I would be 100% on board with that.
So we're almost up against our time. We've covered quite a few things here, but you and I could just talk for like 2 more hours. Is there anything that you did want to make sure that you brought up? Because this will probably be the last time you'll be on before the primary on August 9th, I believe. Anything that you wanted to bring up that we didn't get a chance to talk about yet?
Yeah, I just want to circle back to where we started with the Nugent endorsement, because you and I have spent a lot of time on this show talking about the law enforcement side of DOJ. And because of the crime issues that we have right now, that's an incredibly important side. But I don't want people to lose sight of the fact that the Attorney General can have an enormous impact on protecting their Second Amendment rights, their right to hunt. You might not know this, Ben, but we actually have a constitutional provision in the Wisconsin Constitution to protect people's right to hunt and fish. Did you know that?
No.
And it is rarely invoked, but I'll tell you, as Attorney General, I would invoke it regularly to protect people's right to hunt and fish. It was something that went before the voters. The voters voted on, put it in a constitution, I don't know, 2 decades ago or something like that. It is an incredibly important piece of our Constitution.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm too dumb to understand this, I guess, because I don't understand what that means. So there's a right to do. So you have a right to hunt and fish. Is there anyone right now? What's that?
A constitutional right to hunt and fish.
Got it. Is there right now a situation where people can't?
Well, the issue is if that right is being infringed upon by either the legislature or the governor or one of our agencies. So a great example of that, and something that I used during the stay-at-home cases, was we had these fishermen that were shut down by the illegal shutdown order that Evers issued that clearly impaired people's right to fish. Well, we have a constitutional right to fish. So we asserted, as part of the brief that I filed, that shutdown order violated a bunch of things, but including the right to hunt and fish under our Constitution. So if we have a DNR that goes too far, if we have a legislature that goes too far and impinges on those rights, we need to have an Attorney General who will fight back and make sure we're using that constitutional provision to protect people's hunting heritage and the right to hunt and fish.
Real quick, I just thought of something. I saw it somewhere, and I don't know if it was on your Twitter. Maybe it wasn't you, but I've seen this out there. But the topic is allowing felons to have guns who were felons that were non-violent felons. Mm-hmm. Something like that, if I'm saying that correctly. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand on that? Just your view on that.
Yeah, so I think where you saw this was, it was a question that came up in the debate in the Attorney General debate last week in Milwaukee. And I think, if I remember right, all of the 8 Republican AG candidates said that it's worth looking at. And I agree that it's worth looking at. So this is something that the legislature would have to decide, but it has to be done in a narrow way, because we don't want, violent felons to be able to possess guns. Mm-hmm. Clearly that should be off the table. But one of the things that I had heard regularly when I was knocking on doors running for the state legislature years ago were from older people that had, done something dumb when they were a kid and then had otherwise lived an exemplary life. And they wanted to go hunting with their, grandson or granddaughter, and they were prohibited from doing that.
So I didn't realize that, because, I don't own guns. I hate guns. I mean, I'm pro, like everybody else, having guns. That's fine. I don't care. I don't go outside. I don't like hunting. Everything. Like, I like guns on video games, but not like in real life. So I didn't know that. So if you're 19 years old and you get a felony for something like drug possession or meth or something, that means you can never own a gun the rest of your life?
Yeah.
I didn't know that, actually. I thought it was just, I don't know, like for 20 years, unless you do something wrong or something.
Yeah. So there has been discussion over the years in the legislature about, is there a narrow way?
I told him, this is a funny story. So right before we went live, I said, now remember, in the event that this cuts out, just sign back in. He goes, I'm not Tom Tiffany, because Tom always drops out, it seems like, one of your live shows. I told you.
Well, that's because a call came into my cell phone.
Oh, okay.
And for whatever reason, when a call comes in my cell phone, it shuts off the video.
Well, good thing we had that conversation about how to sign back on.
So anyways, the legislature has over time considered that, had conversations about it. I think the hard part is for people to get to a place where it's narrow enough that you're not, people that are felons have broke this social contract. And I'm not thrilled with the idea of saying, okay, well, we should be soft on you. On the other hand, there there may be an opportunity in a narrow way to allow people who have lived a long exemplary life, have kept their nose clean for a long time, to give them, a narrow group of rights back, including the right to go hunting with a grandkid or something.
Well, it looks like Renee, so I won't put that one on the screen, Renee, but you'll have to read that one later, Adam. Okay. All right. Speaking of, so if anybody, I'll put that video back up again. So if anyone missed it at the very beginning of our show, Adam had announced that Ted Nugent, has endorsed him for Attorney General. There was a 30-second video of Ted Nugent endorsing Adam. So I'll put that up at the very end here. But first, where can people go to find out more information about you? Your website, Adam for AG?
Adam4AG, and the 4 is FOR, Adam4AG.com, and they should go there and learn more about me. And once they learn about me, then they should donate, because this is going to be a very expensive race. So,
and then give money.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
Help us get our message out so that we can win in August and win in November, and begin the process of fixing what Jarchow has broken at DOJ.
And what do you have coming up? I saw Brian Melton on Twitter when I put up that you were going to be on. I saw he replied, said, probably won't be able to watch it. I don't know. He was doing something. But I'll see you next week. So are you going to be in our Washburn County area? What do you have coming up in terms of, events, places that you're going, etc.?
Oh, that's a great question. I have no idea. It's all
one day at a time, man.
Yeah, I know I'm flipping pancakes at a dairy breakfast on Saturday. And, we've hit, I think, 50 or so, or 60. I don't know. I'd have to count counties since I got into this race in January. So we've been running around the state. We've got a team going to events. If I can't be there, it's all hands on deck here for the next,
what is it,
basically 2 months.
Yeah, exactly. Where do you think you're going to end up in this?
I'm going to win. I'm going to win, but I need help. So go to the website, donate, help us out, get the message out. Make sure you go vote. All of those things are incredibly important to win in August.
Awesome. Adam, thanks so much, buddy.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Special thank you to our guest today, Republican candidate for Wisconsin Attorney General Adam Jarchow, for joining us for a chat. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden. I'll see you back here on Tuesday. Hold on, I still got that video to play. But I'll see you back here next Tuesday, where Fitzy and I will be doing our 100th episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy. We're going to be giving away tons of these free tickets to the Spooner Block Party. We're going to do a whole bunch of games. Spooner Health CEO Mike Schaefer is going to be joining, because it should be fun, so join us then. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.
Hey, I'm Ted Nugent, and I support Adam Jarcow for Attorney General in Wisconsin. I know real Wisconsin, the families with heart and soul that want someone representing them for God, family, country, Constitution, Bill of Rights, 10 Commandments, Golden Rule, law and order. Adam Jarcow, representing the U.S. Constitution and real law enforcement and law and order. Adam Jarcow for Attorney General of the great state of Wisconsin.
That's freaking awesome.